sa splendeur se réjouit du malheur des autres. Punya de punya, oh, punya de punya. Je m'en vais là où le vent m'emportera. À sec.
Meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Deb. This is Rick. Also in the studio is Gretchen and Carolyn.
Are you in Montpelier?
Right now, we are in Littleton, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Broadcasting live, and we syndicate our show, so sometimes it broadcasts out, near Montpelier, Burlington, and other parts of Vermont and around the country. I think probably everyone you talk to says, "Oh, I've been playing Putumayo music forever." You've introduced people to some beautiful world music from everywhere. And thank you for all that.
You're very welcome. It's been a joy, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to do it all these years.
Yeah. What an adventure it's been. I mean, who would have thought, right? When you first got started, you would,
Well, I'll tell you, it really goes back even farther than the music, because I was a Latin American studies major in college. And I think it really began when I was about 16 years old. My aunt and uncle. My uncle was a doctor who lectured and was invited to lecture in Mexico. My aunt was an anthropologist, archaeologist, whose professor at the University of Rochester was doing an excavation in Mexico at Teotihuacan, the pyramids outside of Mexico City. So the combination was that they invited me to come explore Mexico with them and their family, which was very, very lucky. And I fell in love with the handicrafts and culture of Mexico and indigenous culture. We just had an incredible summer, and that led me to major in Latin American studies, which led me to travel to South America, to start a handicraft importing business, and on until in 93 started Putumayo World Music.
Wow. It's so interesting that you talk about family. We've been talking about family, and I think this time of year, people really, hone in on family. And, yeah, you were really blessed to have that guidance, early in life, to give you those experiences.
Well, I think it's, that's what, in a way, I don't know, some people feel that there's something at a higher level that's involved in this, but I know that to me, the serendipity of kind of bumping into, the music side of Putumayo began when I was flying back from Indonesia and stopped in Golden Gate Park and heard an African band performing. It just blew me away. And the music had brought all these kind of people of different ages and ethnicities together, having a beautiful time in Golden Gate Park on this, beautiful day. And I went back to New York, and they were playing thrash metal music in one of my stores. So I walked in and went, "Oh my God, this is so inappropriate," at an international import store. And I said, "I got to find some better music to play." And that led me to the record stores looking around for world music, and made me realize how hard it was to find. And back in those days, there was not much you couldn't listen. People didn't know the music. So I just said, well, there has to be some way of putting a compilation together that would be appealing. And it turns out I had been invited to belong to a group called the Social Venture Network. People like Ben Cohen and Ben and Jerry and Anita Roddick from The Body Shop. And the founder of Rhino Records was a member. And so I approached Richard Foos, the co-founder of Rhino, about doing a compilation, just one really to begin. And he said, "Oh, interesting." He said, "That could be a good series." And so we started out as a collaboration with Rhino simply because we're a member, kind of bumped into each other at the Social Venture Network. So it kind of was, in a way, inexorable and kind of like just serendipity after serendipity, and or something in the universe was conspiring, and that's kind of what led to starting Putumayo World Music in '93.
Wow. Gretchen, can I ask you to, because we are live radio, to do a station ID for us?
Absolutely.
Excuse us while we take care of this radio business.
Our hourly obligations. Thank you. You are tuned to, you're listening to Moccasin Tracks today. WZNCLP Bethlehem. NCCR 99.9 FM. You can listen to us online on countrycommunityradio.org.
Thank you, Gretchen. We have a pile of your albums here. We've been playing a little bit of the music, but do you have any favorites? I mean, how do you, choose from all these beautiful albums that you've created? Do you I mean, in your own personal free time, what do you listen to?
Well, I will tell you, there's a lot of serendipity here as well, to the fact, I don't know if you know that we have an office in Vermont. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, Jocelyn, and also
Jacob Edgar with Kumbansha. And so he's been working with us for about 20 years, even though he moved to Vermont and started his own label, but we've collaborated. And so Jacob and I think, have been a really good team working together to find great music. And I'm the one who does generally the sequencing and selection of the music. So, I tell people he's had the best job at Putumayo. I have to run the company and deal with all the day-to-day stuff. He gets to look for music. But I think because he's been able to do that so much over the years, he listens to thousands of songs. So I don't know about thousands each week, but probably as many as 1,000 each week. And I get to listen to maybe 75 or 100 that he pre-selects, so I can kind of not have to spend my time listening to everything. And so, like right now, I'm working on a release that's going to come out in January. We've started a digital Putumayo Discovery digital series. And so my latest favorite album is a digital-only album that came out about a month ago called Global Reggae. And, I've always loved reggae, but, I think the blending of different cultures. So, when, France meets Africa, or, Cuba meets Jamaica, there's a lot of interesting hybrids that are created. And so that album has just been standing out for me. But in general, my favorite music historically has been African and what might be called the Afro-Latin blends, and also Portuguese blends, so Brazilian music, Cape Verde Islands, but, I'm also a big fan of folk music. And so we've started doing some folk collections. And when I first started out, I was thinking about this because Joan Baez just came out with a documentary, and we had featured her and a guy named John Stewart, who was part of the Kingston Trio, on our first folk album that came out the first year we were starting. And it was confusing because, people thought of us and think of us as a world music label. But especially since I moved to New Orleans, where I live now, we've done a lot of blues and jazz collections and New Orleans music. So, it's not just the international side that Putumayo has been focused on.
Beautiful. Rick?
May I ask, do you play an instrument?
No, not really. I took piano lessons when I was a kid. I'm probably a frustrated musician. But I remember growing up, in the 50s and early 60s when the radio was a little more open. You could hear Harry Belafonte and Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela, and people like that were having hits on the radio airwaves. And so, I remember just really loving those sounds, and that probably helped me connect a little bit more when I started focusing on putting compilations together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm thinking right now that there are bands out there that blend, I guess for lack of a better description, indie rock with world music. I'm thinking of the band Karanbin in Houston, who they've traveled all over the world collecting all kinds of world music, and basically a lot from Thailand, and they've incorporated it into their songwriting. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that's obviously been made easier by the internet, but it's gone on historically that we did a series called the Odyssey series. So I don't remember which is the first, maybe Cairo to Casablanca, or we did a Mediterranean Odyssey, Athens to Andalusia. And one of the things that has taken place since time immemorial, when there were camel caravans, there were musicians and people would bring music from one place to another, obviously overland back in those days, but with the internet and with travel, there is so much interconnectedness. And so if I remember going to a couple of festivals in England, and, the musicians in between their sets would be jamming together, and they'd be from different places, and the way they united. We just did back in May, a 30th anniversary Putumayo up in Burlington. And Jacob invited groups from the local area and Montreal. There were 5 different groups. All had songs on Putumayo compilations. And at the end, they did this jam that was just incredible. It was one of those really memorable moments.
Nice. Oh, good for you. That's beautiful. Well, we're hoping maybe Jacob might be joining us. And matter of fact, he's asking to be admitted right now. So I thought it would be fun because he has sent, since I've been doing radio broadcasting, he has sent music to our radio stations. So I knew of his work, and I thought it would be fun to have him on. So you guys could maybe have a little conversation, remembering, some of your travels. One of the things that I think is really cool is that you got the traveling part of collecting music and being in different places together. Welcome, Jacob Egger, to Moccasin Tracks. So nice to see you in person. And
I couldn't let Dan do an interview with my hometown radio station without making an appearance. Yes, I'm a plain fielder, so
all right, cool.
We're up there and have fond memories of GD Bar.
Yeah, great. So, tell us about some of, a traveling story that's really memorial to you guys.
Well, I'll start because, it's just one of those things in life where, there are moments that somehow rise up and you'll never forget them. And one of the times was when I was on an Afropop, the Afropop radio show, syndicated radio show. Okay. George Collinet is the host. Anyway, they were doing a trip to Africa, and I joined the trip, and we were in in Dakar, Senegal. And everyone was so looking forward to Youssou N'Dour and Baba Mal and many of the legends, which I was as well. But one night we went to a small little club. There may be only 15 people there, all having a great time. But there was this Afro-Cuban band. It was African band playing Latin music. And that blend was just mesmerizing. And it was so, I'll never forget it. I think I went back 3 nights in a row. It was just so sparkling. And on that same trip, went to Cape Verde, the Cape Verde Islands, where even though most of the great legendary singers like Cesaria Ever and others either had moved away or spent most of their time traveling, there were some singers there. It was almost like music was in the blood. And so a lot of times my experiences, Jacob's had a lot more than I have, because he's really done even, probably 10 times the traveling that I've done. So I'll turn it over to him for some of his favorite experiences.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately,
favorite experiences. Yeah.
When Dan first approached me back in 1998, his offer was, I need somebody to travel around the world and find great songs for Putumayo. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I can do that. And what that has meant has been a life spent traveling and looking for music. And the moments that I remember most are the ones actually that happen off stage. I think one of the things that's so special about music is that the music opens so many doors. It's a way for you to connect with people from different backgrounds and different cultures. You all have music in common. And so the memories that I have of travel and music have always been the ones that take place in people's kitchens or their living rooms, in personal events that are not open to the public, but where magical music is made. And it's in those circumstances where you really feel like you're having a very, very special and unique experience and connecting with people in a very personal way. And that's the magic of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's what I love about this radio station where we're at right now is in Littleton, New Hampshire. And people really thrive here on being live, so much so that we take the whole broadcast board and go to a live concert, they call it Jury Jam, and we broadcast live all weekend, So it's like I think we appreciate what you're saying there.
I will say one thing, add something. We kind of took, before COVID, Jacob and I worked on a series of actual trips to different parts. Well, the idea was to take people on musical adventures in real life. And so we did 2 trips to Cuba. We did a trip to New Orleans. But it was actually, I hate to say it, my first trip to Cuba. I had planned to go once before. We shot a music video there. And Jacob had coordinated the live music that we were going to see. But it was really funny. The hotel we stayed in, there was a band that was playing out front every afternoon. And that's one of the things that's so amazing, is that not everyone has a recording contract. Not everyone who's really good is able to tour the world. And so, I think on the one hand, most of my favorite artists have been people that no one has ever heard of, including myself, whether, Jacob finds them or I find them. And going back to, I've spent a lot of time in the US. So living in New Orleans, you'll consistently hear people who you never heard of before. And all of a sudden you're walking down the street. As I was last night, I did a circle around, there was a brass band playing outside of Tipitina's, and I did a few circles because they sounded so good. So I think especially in these kind of musical cities or towns and places, there's, a wealth of great music and artists who may not yet be well known.
Yeah.
Or may never be well known outside of their own areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Jacob, do you want to share any of the projects that you're working on lately?
Well, I think what Dan mentioned, it just made me think of one that we've been very involved with over the last year and a half, which is our Putumayo Discovery series. This is a project that developed out of a couple of problems that we were trying to solve. One was how to translate the Putumayo experience into the digital era. Mm-hmm. Putumayo has long been about the physical CD and the packaging and the distribution and the visibility in non-traditional retail and all of that. And we've been trying to come up with a great way to keep Putumayo visible on the streaming platforms and the download platforms. And on the other hand, we were seeing this that a lot of the artists that we love, were struggling to have their music discovered and heard on these platforms. And so we have created this new approach in which we can use the name of Putumayo and the recognition of our brand to help artists get a leg up on those platforms, to get them started. By partnering with them in this new series, we've been able to increase their streaming numbers, to get them in front of new audiences. And like Dan says, like all of these musicians, so many wonderful musicians out there, not everyone is going to be a household name like Bob Marley or something. There's going to be 100,000 other great reggae musicians or African musicians or whatever it might be that are going to be unsung and unheard, even if their music really deserves to be heard. And I think that's been very gratifying to at least play a small role in helping some of these artists get their music heard. And I know that many of them have expressed to me how much they appreciate it and how important it's been for them. So that's good. And I hope we continue to grow that project.
I should also add that one of the things along the way that has made an impact to me is how many even well-known artists are not always familiar. They can't be. There's so much music out there. As someone once said to me, Dan, you guys are doing this pretty cool job of taking an ocean of the world's music and distilling it and presenting it in a way that turns people on to compelling artists who would otherwise not be heard. And I remember I flashed on this the other day that I went to a Rhythm and Blues Foundation dinner and bumped into a girlfriend of Jackson Browne that led me to introduce him to Habib Kwate. I had an album on me and gave it to the girlfriend. Brought it home. She ordered 75 copies. They gave them out to friends. He decided to go to Mali and write with and do a little work with Habib. The same kind of thing happened with Bonnie Raitt. And, when you talk about magic moments, sometimes those moments are, just an incredible artist at the peak of his ability. So Oliver Mtukudzi, who I saw for the first time at a Swedish, I think it was Womex in Sweden, a big music conference for the industry. And I was walking to another appointment and I was stunned by the beautiful music. And that's when we were signing artists. It was a short-lived endeavor. I realized I'm better at doing compilations, and people say, how come you don't sign artists anymore? I said, well, I'm better at dating than marriage. It's like doing a compilation is a little bit like dating, and signing an artist is a little like getting married to them.
Musical balloons.
Wow. So, I have to ask, you've done a couple where you focused on Native American music. Any future in focusing on more artists that are of the original peoples?
Well, I will give you a little scoop here. I don't think I've said this on the air, but I'm planning to move to New Mexico next year. So I'm in New Orleans now. I probably will keep a small place here. A friend of mine offered to share a place, but the idea is that my sister and a lot of friends live in Santa Fe, and I've been going back and forth for years. And I had a house there in the 80s for about 3 years. I always liked going there. And one of the things that's so ever present is the blending and the availability of indigenous music, and as well as Latin music or Southwestern music. So I certainly expect, like what happened when I moved to New Orleans, I started doing a lot more jazz and blues collections. So I would expect, if tradition follows, that I'd be likely to work on more indigenous albums.
And from my side, I've been spending a lot more time. I'm in Montreal right now. Actually, I have a second home. And have been really, really enjoying the greater visibility and greater production of music from Indigenous communities in Canada, and in particular Inuit and Inuktitut music. It's just amazing what's coming out in Canada, what's being supported. And we have, as part of our Putumayo Discovery Series, already put out 3 songs with Canadian Indigenous artists. and I expect that we'll continue to do more because it's a very thriving scene right now, and there's a lot of creativity, and I'm really excited about it. And I think that there's a revival going on, not just in Canada, but across the Americas, where people are looking at indigenous culture and tradition and feeling comfortable, both expressing it in its traditional approach, but also creating new sounds and new flavors. And I'm sure we're going to be covering more of that at Putumayo as well.
Yeah. With that fusion term, bringing, I see a lot of the indigenous artists using that, bringing, electric guitars and, other instruments into, their traditional songs. A real beautiful blend. And we're excited because, I have that same thing happening. A lot of Canadian promoters of indigenous music have been sending music and bringing that awareness. So that's kind of cool. Yay, good for you, Jacob.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I think that struck me. We certainly, there are Canadian artists who break through in the U.S., but the wealth of great kind of roots music artists in Canada is under-recognized here in the U.S. And of course, those blends that have long existed in especially in Quebec, have been appealing. And one of the things I was just thinking back again to the early days of Putumayo, one of the people who was working for me, who Jacob knew, named Darren, he once said to me, he said, Dan, I think that I've kind of figured you out. You're more of a sushi fan than a sashimi fan, because you like the rice that kind of helps take the stronger fishy taste and blends it together a little bit more easily. And I said, well, Darren, I think you're right. I think that is one of the reasons why Brazilian music, Afro-Cuban music, like I was saying before, and some of the other blends seem to be, the most appealing, the music I like best.
Meanwhile, I'll eat anything.
Yeah, you'd want to ask Jacob what he'll.
Yeah, I have very open-minded kids.
And actually, it's funny. My son is traveling now. He's on his gap year before college, and he's in Thailand. And the stuff that he'll eat is so much more vast and diverse than I would. So Jacob and he are on the same page. And he marveled at Jacob's toothpaste collection. Jacob has this remarkable collection of toothpaste from all over the world.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. That But what I will say, that what Dan is describing in a nutshell is sort of the concept of Putumayo and what it has been trying to do over the years is basically come up with a way to present. Music is very diverse. Cultures are very diverse. And this notion that music is a universal language is true to some degree, but it's not 100% true, because there's a lot of music that people can hear and not understand and not connect to. There's a lot of pretty esoteric music out there. And I think what we are trying to do is to select songs that we think will appeal to people who like sushi. But we hope that eventually they'll graduate to sashimi, in the sense that we try to wrap it in an appealing package and make it something that they'll be willing to try, and hopefully they'll develop a taste for it and go deeper. And that's always been how we've approached things at Putumayo. This notion of, we want everybody to feel like they get something out of the music that we're presenting, but we also recognize that there's another, that we're hoping to open a door that they'll go through and dig even deeper and find more from that.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. We often will introduce people to, like, who would think that reggae from the second mesa out in Arizona, or actually it's the third mesa, they would be making reggae music, but it's happening. And it's beautiful to hear those lyrics or whatever they bring from that indigenous root to that world beat, So
well, it's funny in Santa Fe. There, I go there 2 or 3 times a year. On the plaza, you'll have a lot of artists. And I, remember my sister just forwarded a video of Robert Mirabal, who was featured on one of our earlier albums. And he was playing a kind of interesting blend of reggae and indigenous music. And so it is almost, it's almost rare to see somebody who isn't influenced by other music in their development. Once you're introduced, it's really hard to want to stay refined or defined by only your roots or your local town. It's like once you get out in the world, you're exposed to things and it's hard to go back.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. And that's what, makes the whole world one big family.
Yep.
And I think too, it's a misconception that there's pure music. Music has never been 100% pure in the sense of uninfluenced by outside cultures. And this goes back to, hundreds, thousands of years. All of human history has been a process of cultural interaction. And the ways in which we adopt different things from other cultures, be it different food traditions, different music traditions, different language traditions, all of these things are part of our human development and our interaction. And I think that holds true with music and always has. And so to deny that is to sort of deny a reality of how we've always interacted as people.
Well, we certainly appreciate your work and look forward to what comes out of the Santa Fe move. And Jacob, it's really wonderful to, hear from you directly. We just have a little bit more time. So, in closing, Rick or Gretchen, do you have any questions for the founder of Putumayo Records, and also Jacob, what's your label again?
Kumbancha.
Kumbancha. We appreciate it. We love it. We broadcast here all your music. And since our focus is a lot of times the Native American traditions and culture, we appreciate what you've produced in that way. But we consider, a lot of tribal music is world music. So it's like, that world tribal stuff. We love it.
Well, thank you. I will say this, partly because this has been the 30th anniversary of Putumayo year. I have had a chance to speak to a lot of the radio stations that have been playing this kind of music for decades around the country. And, it is really a pleasure to connect with you and with some of the other radio DJs and hosts who have been playing world music, from whether with a specific area of focus like African music or reggae. But the idea is that there's this network of people who are all kind of brought together by the joy and the uplifting international music that we all love. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, continue doing what you're doing, because it's certainly well received everywhere. And
thank you.
Yes, we will. In fact, I've got a few hundred songs to listen to before I send new music to Dan every week. On Wednesday nights, my deadline to get him all the new releases. And we update our playlists every Friday with new music, both Putumayo music and also just new artists we hear and love. So I encourage your listeners, if they're looking for music, to check out Putumayo's playlists on Spotify and Apple and Pandora, YouTube. We're on all of these platforms, and hopefully they can continue their exploration through that.
And actually, I should add that on our website, putumayo.com, Putumayo.com, we have regional sections. So if you're interested in African music or Latin American music, you can go, and then you can kind of you can go and listen on those platforms if you'd like. So there are a few options on our website to take you there.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much, and I hope that you'll continue to send us music.
We will. We will indeed. Take care. Hello,
right.
everyone in Vermont. Take care.
All right.
Thank you for being on the show.
Bye now.
Bye.
Yeah. Carolyn?